It's just Ehren right here. We're gonna try to light up our little stage here. Get the show going. We have a great episode. Let's kick it off. I think that's what we have to do. Question Period Canada is coming up. We've got some great videos to watch beforehand. So let's get into
that. That's his new name. What's your thing? Question, bro. Chuck me. Don't sell out, bro. Don't sell out. Where you go? You're selling out, Chuck me. Sell out thing, bro. You sold out a gone, bro. You sold out a gone.
Hola, senor. We are gringos who wish to spend mucho dinero in your country.
Splendid. Welcome to Canada.
Go!
Oh, Canada! So to win Greta back, I have to go to Toronto.
Canada? Why should we leave America to visit America Junior?
Coming up next, a Canadian couple who say they are deathly afraid of scorpions. Oh, that stings, eh? Oh, God! Sting those Canucks.
I love this show. Take that, you stupid hosers!
Tonight, Canada turns to its most famous director, Ivan Reitman, the man who brought us Ghostbusters.
Hello, Calais, we're in luck. They had a Magnum at the shoe counter.
I knew it. You're there. Just hear me out.
Bart, forget it. I'm leaving in 10 minutes. My dad's shooting a movie in Toronto.
You're going to Spain?
Goodbye, Bart.
We aren't as well behaved as our goody two-shoes brother Canada, who, by the way, has never had a girlfriend. I'm just saying.
Okay, Abe, here are your fake Canadian health cards. Take them to any pharmacy and you'll get enough drugs to make Regina look like Saskatoon.
That's a good one, Johnny. Thanks a million, Johnny. In appreciation, I'd like to give you this DVD player.
What the heck? Where do you pour the syrup?
And now, in the Olympic spirit of peace and goodwill, we release the Canadian dove, the beaver.
This was all preventable!
Maggie, what do you think?
All right, son. We'll all go. First class.
It's so clean and bland. I'm home. Wow, this bus station is the birthplace of Paul Schaefer. Dad, no, it says don't walk.
Doesn't matter. They have free health care. Whoa, I'm rich!
Take off through the grapevine door. Take off. It's a beauty way to go. Take off.
I'm a 10-year-old boy in Toronto. I should be the happiest kid in the world. But I can't stop thinking about Greta.
Oh, you'll win her back, eh? And B, we're closing in 5 minutes.
Would a U.S. dollar change your mind?
American currency! What time would you like your breakfast, sir?
Over there, you can see them shooting the film Canadian Graffiti.
I see a drive on the left up here.
No, ma'am. I'm drunk. I'd like some Vioxx, Coumadin, Albuterol, Prevacid, and an auto-inflate blood pressure monitor seat cuff with case.
Anything you like, fellow Canadian.
Canadian? Them's fighting words! I mean, accurate words.
What's with the Canadian flag on your backpack?
Well, some people in Europe have the impression that America has made some stupid choices in the past, 5 years. So, for the next week, I'm from Canada.
I think Dad may blow your cover.
That flag is mine! Don't mess with Texas! Shock and awe, losers! Shock and awe!
Well, Circle cut my bacon. Look at all these Yankee doodly dandies. Is there another Vietnam going on?
Hello, neighborino to the north. I sure like the cut of your gibberish.
Cohen doodly
Diddly
diddly.
oodly. Diddly oodly.
Tick-a-doodly.
Loony oodly.
Noodly doddly diddly doddly.
Loony oodly.
Diddly daddler atner.
Maple adly.
Noodly doddly diddly doddly. Say, would you like to puff on a reeferino? It's legal here.
They warned me Satan would be attractive. Let's go.
'cause we got them.
You back off, hosers. They're in Canadian waters, eh?
Beat it, you puck-slapping maple suckers.
Take a hike, you Shatner-stealing Mexico touchers.
I'm gonna knock you into the next province!
Well, we've seen some wild sweeping here today.
Yes, the broom handling has been truly dazzling. What's this? Two young Yankee Doodles have turned this match into a dandy.
Ha 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 ha. Both our viewers must be thrilled.
Stop him! He's expressing his faith, eh?
Hold on, we're just innocent tourists.
I took another sip.
Homie, we're going to Vancouver!
Heck your winter coat. We're going to Canada's warmest city.
So, what do we do now? Well, we're in Canada. Let's find something fun. I've got just the ticket. Come on. I can't believe we're on the Canadian Olympic basketball team. Yep, it's just that easy.
Wow, that was close. You can be the center.
Today, Mounties busted a major American drug smuggling ring. Former U.S. astronaut Homer Simpson was taken into custody.
Oh, my butt looks so huge during perp walks.
We've confiscated your car and its contents.
Nous avons confisqué votre voiture et ses contenus.
You may leave Canada, but never return.
Vous êtes permis de quitter le Canada, mais vous n'avez plus le droit de rentrer.
I am a big fat French idiot.
Je suis un gros, hey!
Aye, not a hymn to war like our national anthem, but a sweet, soothing hymn like the national anthem of Canada.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land,
True patriot love, in all thy sons command.
With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true Lord strong and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
To listen to a trust fund baby lecturing Canadians about being too rich.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
He shouldn't quit his day job, but actually, he should quit his day job.
So you want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong?
I made a mistake. When I was a teacher out in Vancouver, I attended an end-of-year gala where the theme was Arabian Nights. And I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I shouldn't have done that.
I admit I came in physical contact with a number of members as I extended my arm in, including someone behind me who I did not see. If anyone feels that they were impacted by my actions, I completely apologize. It's not my intention to hurt anyone.
Listen to Bill's Bandy Doughboy or Team Sexy. Listen, I'll tell you what. I'll have a little drink.
Hey, everyone, quiet down. There's a bulletin on TV.
Hey, bud. Hey, who? You. Hey, me? Yeah, come here.
And that low-income families don't benefit from tax breaks because they don't pay taxes.
The new premier there, Danielle Smith, she's going to end up essentially going to war with Trudeau. It's enough to break up the whole damn country, as far as I'm concerned. And there's an irritable part of me that thinks that would be for the best.
I'm standing in front of Canada's Senate, where Bill C-11
Trudeau's censorship bill just passed. It's now on its way to the House of Commons. Come with me. The internet is this magical space where we can find pretty much anything we want. We value the freedom that we have to find the content that we enjoy most. Bill C-11 is a direct threat to that. Under Bill C-11, the government will determine what's most important to put in front of your eyeballs.
The goal of the government, the goal of the parliament, is to create sort of mandates for Canadian creators like myself to make more explicitly Canadian content for a Canadian audience exclusively.
The Heritage Minister claims that Bill C-11 is all about protecting Canadian culture.
The bill, as said, it's very simple. It's about, streamers contributing to Canadian culture. Canadians' strong culture is no accident. We made the decision to fight for that.
Who says that Canadian culture needs to be protected? As if it's so fragile that without government intervention, it'll somehow crumble and dissipate.
To view this as a problem that needs fixing reeks of political obliviousness.
Since when is it the government's job to generate culture? Isn't that the people's job?
It is, I think, fundamentally anti-democratic to pass legislation like this that gives an unelected, unaccountable body like the CRTC so much power.
Is that really democratic?
Well, hey, democracy.
The way it used to work is that an artist or aspiring creative would have to put together a package and send it to a traditional broadcaster.
Andrew Simon, who is the executive or producer of this television show Weekend, asked me to come out here and talk for 3 minutes on anything.
The traditional broadcasters, such as the CBC or Bell Media, would then look at the package and determine if they wanted to give this artist a spot or not. Now, in the age of the internet, artists don't have to worry about that. They have the freedom to create and put content out there for Canadians to watch.
I, as a new media creator, do not want to live in the world of old media.
Under Bill C-11, they'll no longer enjoy that same artistic freedom or creativity. Instead, they'll have to account for an arbitrary list of criteria that is set out by the government.
There's many criteria to define Canadian content.
If they meet that list of criteria, they'll get bumped to the top of the screen where folks will get to enjoy watching them. However, if they don't meet that list of criteria, they'll be bumped down or demoted. In other words, Bill C-11 puts the government in this position where they get to pick who wins and who loses, who's in and who's out.
YouTube has its own algorithm, which is controversial in its own terms, like what makes a YouTube video easy to discover or not easy to discover. YouTube has their own sort of system of that. If government gets involved, if the CRTC gets involved and comes up with their own sort of metrics, then you've got this whole new stress to worry about. A lot of Canadians are going to be oblivious to all of these hoops that they have to jump through. A lot of Canadian YouTubers are oblivious to this discussion that's even happening. So there's I worry very much that a lot of YouTubers are going to wake up one day and they're suddenly going to see their content suppressed. Suddenly they're not going to be making as much money, not getting enough views because governments intervened.
How does this threaten YouTube and streaming services? Would it not also, at the same time, broaden your reach across Canadian viewers?
So YouTube's going to look at that and say, oh, Canadian CanCon producers have an unfair advantage on this platform. They're going to have to actually net zero and detract views internationally.
No Canadian YouTuber is successful just by appealing to Canadians. They're successful because they appeal to a global audience. That is the way that media works in the 21st century. We want the status quo to exist as it currently is, which promotes our content equally to all nations of the world, not exclusively to a Canadian audience.
Digital-first creators didn't ask for this bill. They don't need this bill. They don't want this bill. This bill is an infringement on their ability to captivate an audience organically. It's an infringement on their ability to achieve success, which they're doing all on their own without the government.
I'm wondering if, this freedom that you're advocating is obviously good for YouTubers who succeed, but it also has another impact, and this is on minorities if nobody watches it.
I mean, I could make a video about anything, and if no one watches it, doesn't necessarily mean that it's underserving the topic that I created a video about. It just may mean that there's maybe not that many people interested in the content that I'm offering.
Actually, one of the marvelous things about an unregulated YouTube is that you do kind of sink or swim based entirely on the quality or the popularity of your content. You know, there are a lot of failed Canadian YouTubers. There's a lot of failed Canadian actors. Nobody is guaranteed success in the cultural realm. But I just think that YouTube is a marvelous case study of how you can be an independent Canadian content creator and achieve, you know, wealth and success and fame and all of the sorts of things that creatives want, you know, without government regulation.
They produce the content that they're passionate about, the content that allows them to express themselves creatively. They're also accounting for what Canadians want to see, or maybe even what a global audience wants to see.
Of the dozens of online video makers and viewers I have heard from, all have been crystal clear that they have zero desire to live under a government with the power to force platforms like YouTube to push, promote, suggest, or otherwise encourage certain kinds of Canadian content to Canadians who have not freely chosen to see it.
Bill C-11 is proof that the government doesn't trust Canadians with freedom. Bill C-11 will put the government in a position where they control what you see online.
That is the tradition of some countries, but not of ours. In Canada, freedom should never be viewed as an obstacle to patriotism.
After more than a year of deliberation, Bill C-11 is now in the House of Commons for its final vote. Bill C-11 is up for final debate right behind these doors, but it's not too late. It is your final chance to have your say. Email the Heritage Minister or your local Liberal Member of Parliament and tell them to keep their hands off your YouTube. Kill Bill C-11.
Our colleagues at Radio Canada are reporting that convicted serial killer Robert Pickton has been badly injured in a prison assault. A source with provincial police said Pickton was attacked in a common area of the maximum security Port Cartier institution. Pickton is serving a life sentence for the murder of 6 women. CBC's Marianne Demain is here with the details on that. Marianne, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you, Natasha, that 2 sources spoke with Radio Canada, including that police source, saying that serial killer Robert Pickton is in critical condition after that serious assault inside that maximum security prison where he is currently serving 6 life sentences. Now, aside from the fact that this occurred in a common area of the prison, there are still other details we are trying to confirm, not only here at CBC News, but also with Radio Canada, including when this happened, what led up to this attack, specifically what type of injuries Pickton may have suffered as a result of this attack, and whether any specific weapons were used. In the meantime, what we do know is that a statement from Correctional Services of Canada said that an inmate who was the victim of a major assault was taken out of the prison and moved to a hospital for treatment. We also know that the assailant in this attack is another inmate. Now, the Federal Public Security Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, told Radio Canada's Tout un matin that there will be an internal investigation in the prison to find out exactly what happened. And of course, we know that there is also a police investigation underway as well.
Marianne, while we wait for further details on what took place, remind us, who is this man, Robert Pickton?
Yeah, Robert Pickton was a pig farmer in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. He is now considered one of the most notorious serial killers in Canadian history, suspected in the deaths of dozens of women who disappeared from Vancouver's downtown east side. As I mentioned, he is serving currently 6 life sentences for the deaths of 6 women who also disappeared in Vancouver's east side. Those were Serena Abbotsway, as well as Mona Wilson, Andrea Josbury, Brenda Ann Wolfe, Georgina Papin, and Marnie Frey. There were 20 further first-degree murder charges against Robert Pickton. Those were all stayed because he was already serving the maximum sentence in this case. I should also mention that remains or DNA from more than 30 women were found on his farm, most of them from Indigenous women. And so that farm, again, located outside of Vancouver. So again, that is his background, but the focus also right now on what new information we can get in on this case. And of course, we are keeping a close eye on that.
Okay, thanks so much, Marianne.
These kids buying ice cream literally encapsulate what's going on all around the world, while our leaders keep telling us everything's fine and it's the best economy ever. Truly based kids, I think she's got a bright future.
Girls, what's just happened?
So, there's an ice cream van there selling just 2 ice creams with 2 chewing gums in it.
Yeah.
For bloody £9 for 2 of them.
£9 for 2?
Yeah, £9. That is going to get nowhere. The one that comes on my street is either £1 a pee or or £2. Like, you're going to get nowhere with that.
No, he ain't, is it?
No, he ain't.
That's well bad, isn't
Yeah,
it?
you should know. And he only does bloody card. Stood there with my cash. Bloody hell.
That's well bad, isn't it?
Bloody well bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet he can hear me.
Andy got beat up by a 5th grade girl.
Make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe for more daily news.
Okay, I'm coming to you live.
Okay, guys, we're going to cross over into question period. I do think that we have a question period ready to go. Just give me one moment. We'll have that called up. It's great to see everybody. It's amazing. Every day our crowd grows. It's awesome. And we do have question period.
Building your online business? Go to Wix.com and set up.
Women and children between 1914 and 1923. I would like to thank the Pontian Association of Montreal, the Hellenic Canadian Congress, the Hellenic Congress of Quebec, and all other associations who have been working hard to ensure that we never forget. I'd like to thank the Canadian Hellenic Congress for initiating the petition to have the Greek genocide officially recognized by the Government of Canada, and I encourage all Greek Canadians to sign it to have your voices heard. Today I rise in the House to pay tribute to the victims, survivors, and families of the Pontian genocide. Que leur mémoire soit
May their memories be eternal.
Aeonia imnimitus.
The honourable member from Kenora.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are having to cancel their summer vacation as the price of a simple road trip is now unaffordable. Mr. Speaker, this government's inflationary deficits and high tax agenda have driven up fuel costs nearly 50%. And now they are planning to quadruple the carbon tax and make everything even more expensive. But common sense Conservatives are calling for this government to give Canadians a break. Mr. Speaker, we are calling on the government to axe the carbon tax, the federal fuel tax, and the GST on gas and diesel until Labor Day. And that would save Ontario families $592 this summer and allow for more people to be able to take a family trip. We already know that the Canadians cannot afford this costly coalition and their carbon tax, and we know that only Conservatives will bring home lower prices for all Canadians by axing the tax for everyone, everywhere, for good.
The honourable member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians are struggling just to put food on the table. Food insecurity continues to worsen across this country, and today, Food Bank Canada's poverty report card confirms it. Nearly 50% of Canadians feel financially worse off than last year. 25% of Canadians are going hungry, and food banks have seen a 50% increase since 2021. And Mr. Speaker, it's this Prime Minister's record. This NDP Liberal government's inflationary spending and taxes are driving up the cost of living, and his plan is just to keep hiking up the carbon tax, making gas, heating, and groceries even more expensive. Canadians are desperate, and the Prime Minister is not listening. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost. Only common sense Conservatives will cap the spending, axe the carbon tax, and bring home lower prices for all Canadians.
The honourable member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, on the occasion of the 221st anniversary of the creation of the flag of Haiti, I had the high honour of decorating 21 personalities of Haitian origin here in the House of Commons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for having done us the honour of participating in this ceremony with other dignitaries. In thanks to these people who have exceptionally contributed over the past 60 years to our country, I'd like to list their names.
René Amilcar, Dominique Anglade, Nicole Baptiste, Carla Beauvais, Yvette Bonny, Fabienne Collat, Simone Métellus, Claudie Maupoint, Ruth Pierre-Paul, Dorothy Rowe, Marjorie Villefranche, hommage aux compatriotes, aux messieurs Angelo Cadet, Jean-Claude Icard, Fayol Jean, Sacha Wilkie Mérazil, Jérôme Métellus, Harry Max Prophète, Franz Saint-Elmy, Dickens Saint-Ville et Wilson Zanon.
Thank you to them all.
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Abortion rights are human rights, but the Liberals continue to deny equal access to that right. In New Brunswick, the Prime Minister has done nothing to address the total absence of abortion clinics throughout the province. And in Manitoba, we are at risk of losing our only abortion clinic. A right is only as good as the ability to access it, but this is merely a dream in many rural and remote areas. Meanwhile, Conservatives, including the Conservative leader, voted in favor of backdoor legislation to threaten abortion rights, while other Conservatives have tabled anti-choice petitions and have spoken at anti-choice rallies. The Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada has listed every Conservative MP as anti-choice after they unanimously supported Bill C-311. When abortion rights are under attack, words are not enough. The government must act to ensure everyone who needs a safe, trauma-informed abortion has access to receive one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Montcalm. In February of 2023, the Joint Committee recommended through a large majority that people suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's should be able to emit an advance directive for medical assistance in dying, even though 83% of Canadians support this kind of request. The various ministers of health and justice are conspicuous by their lack of political courage and their total lack of understanding of the issue. They are once again waiting for afflicted patients to be forced to bear the burden of winning their case in courts. Today, with the support of the Collège des Médecins du Québec, the Quebec Bar, the Chambre des Notaires du Québec, and a number of associations, we are once again calling upon the government to allow Quebec and any other province that wishes to do so to go ahead with advanced directives. To the people who are suffering and to Ms. de Montigny, we shall not abandon you. Never will we abandon you.
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
Today's report from Food Banks Canada is shocking, jaw-dropping, and sad. Almost 44% of the population are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. The Liberal NDP government is failing Canadians. When that much of your income is going to housing, if you can even find housing, there is barely anything left for other necessities like food. 2 million people a month are accessing food banks in Canada. 1 in 3 of those visitors are children. Canadians are doing everything that is asked for them. They're going to work, they're paying outrageous taxes, but they still can't get ahead. Why? Because that Prime Minister spends, and then gaslights Canadians, tells them that Canada isn't broken and that everything is great. Canada and Canadians deserve housing and food they can afford. Conservatives will restore that grade from an F to an A, and we will bring it home so that everybody can afford to live. Yeah.
The honourable member from Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, last week I had the honour of attending the high-level meeting on antimicrobial resistance at the United Nations in New York. As the director of UNITE, an international parliamentary organization for global health public, antimicrobial resistance on AMR is one of the top 10 global public health threats to humanity and causes more than 5 million deaths per year. Political leadership is essential for raising public awareness. It must work together to combat AMR. This is why the Government of Canada established a PHAC AMR task force and provided provided an important multi-year funding commitment of over $28 million in 2021. This government recognized the need to continue supporting research efforts in budget 2024 by allocating $1.8 billion to core research grant funding. I encourage everyone to work together for global public health in Canada and around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales, oral questions.
The honorable
Here we go.
leader
Let's
of the
get it
opposition.
going. It is pretty fun.
After 9 years of debt,
always with the
taxes, and inflation
Always.
from this Prime Minister and the Bloc, Canadians are hungry, literally. According to the Food Bank report of Canada, 50% of Canadians say that they are in a worse situation than last year. 1/4 of Canadians have to use food banks for young people. How come the PM is forcing Canadians to feed their obese government when they can't even feed themselves? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, it would be more credible from the Leader of the Opposition if he wasn't opposed to our food school program that will help 400,000 children across the country to eat better with school programs. We are here to invest and to help families, while the Conservatives are only offering cuts and austerity, Mr. Speaker. It's the same thing in terms of our investment in dental care that have allowed almost 100,000 seniors to have access to dental care free of charge. And the Conservatives continue to be opposed to this. We are here to help with affordability.
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, his plan for the full school program has provided no meals, 0 meals. It has just created red tape and not helped children. And in terms of austerity is what the 25% of young Canadians that have had to use food banks over the past 3 years are already experiencing. The 50% of Canadians who are worse off than last year are also experiencing this. And the 25% of them that are in food insecurity know what austerity is. It's austerity for Canadians. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, once again, we see that the Conservatives are just trying to benefit from challenges that Canadians are facing. They're trying to score political points. But when it's time to vote on investments that will help families, like our school food program, or more daycare spots, or $10 daycare across the country, or dental care programs for seniors, they vote against these programs, Mr. Speaker. They are proposing government austerity and not investing in Canadians who are in need. We believe in economic growth and investment in families in need.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister's taxes, debt, inflation, and promises, Canadians are hungry. Literally, according to the Food Banks Canada report, 50% of Canadians say they're worse off than a year ago. 25% are in food insecurity, and 1/4 of young adults went to a food bank in 3 months alone this year. Why is it that Canadians who can't feed themselves have to keep feeding his morbidly obese government?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, it would be slightly more credible to hear the Conservatives concerned about the challenges Canadians are facing if they hadn't stood and voted against more spaces in childcare, voted against our dental care program that 2 million seniors have signed up for and has now delivered close to 100,000 dental appointments for seniors in just 22 days, Mr. Speaker. They've also stood against our school foods program that's going to help 400,000 more kids across the country have full bellies as they start their school day. These are investments that they are opposed to, that we are there to help Canadians with.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's a school food program that has not served a single solitary meal, even though it was promised 3 years ago. What he's feeding is bureaucracy, not children. And if all of his spending were working, then why is it that Food Banks Canada reports today that 25% of young adults had to go to a food bank in 3 months alone, and 2 million Canadians are lined up every month? Mr. Speaker, with so many empty stomachs, isn't it just a little bit wacko to be raising carbon taxes on farmers and food?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we announced the National Food School Program in the budget, and just after question period today, the Conservatives have an opportunity to vote in favour of that National School Food Program and other initiatives that are going to help hundreds of thousands of kids across this country, and indeed millions of Canadians with the high cost of living. But he's going to stand there and vote against it, Mr. Speaker, to prevent it from delivering the help Canadians need. We will keep going on delivering support for Canadians, and we will keep going on putting more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians with our price on pollution that supports Canadian families and successfully fights climate change.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's been making exactly these same promises for 9 long years, and yet his NDP Liberal government has doubled housing costs, doubled the debt, increased the size of the bureaucracy by 50%. Now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax, all to deliver 2 million people to a food bank every single month. Mr. Speaker, if government programs were really going to solve the problem he caused, then why are Canadians so hungry?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, here's a perfect example of where the Conservatives stand. They stood and voted against our dental care for seniors program. As of today, over 2 million seniors have signed up, and in the 22 days since May 1st, close to 100,000 seniors have gotten free dental care. That's in just 22 days. On a program that he voted against and that he campaigned against across the country over the past number of months. We will be there to invest in supporting Canadians with a national school food program, with dental care, with more childcare spaces, despite him voting against.
Hear, hear. You're going to have the
Honourable Member for Belleuil Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals say they're interested in French in Quebec and in Canada, but the Liberals are gradually paying for the disappearance of French in Western Canada. Moreover, they're mobilizing hundreds of unilingual Anglophone members to protect their Liberal colleague. Does the Prime Minister really want Francophones to believe that it's out of love for the French language that they are flooding the Association of Francophone Parliamentarians? Mr. Speaker, Francophones across our country, including those in Quebec, know full well that the Bloc is not interested in the future of French outside of Quebec. That's why they want to make Quebec their own country to protect French. But we understand that the best way to protect French in Quebec and across Canada is by investing in all communities who speak French across the country to protect French in Quebec. Yes, we're there to do that, but also to continue to stand up to protect Francophone minorities across this country, and we're going to continue to do so. The Honourable Member for Belleuil Chambly. That's not true, Mr. Speaker, but the best thing that could happen to French in Quebec and in Canada and across the world would be an independent Quebec. However, Mr. Speaker, what did the Prime Minister say during the English debate in 2021 when I was the only one who wanted to talk about Francophones outside of Quebec in English, and I was told I wasn't allowed to talk about French in English at the English debate in his country? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in that debate, like in all debates, and all possible opportunities, I always stand up to defend the French fact in Canada and to defend Francophone communities across this country. I've always done so, and I'm going to continue to do so. Defend linguistic duality and both official languages in this country, across this country, is what I've done. It's the Liberal Party of Canada, and for our Liberal government, we're going to continue to do so at every opportunity we have.
The honourable member from Burnaby South.
Loblaws isn't content just ripping off Canadians when they buy their groceries. Now they're teaming up with Rogers and Bell.
Just gonna, colleagues. Colleagues, it's important that we are able to hear the questions that are being asked as well as the answers. The honourable member from Burnaby South on the top, please.
Sure. Again, I know the Conservatives don't like when I take on corporate greed, but Loblaws isn't content just ripping off Canadians when it comes to their groceries. Now Loblaws is teaming up with Rogers and Bell to rip off Canadians with their cell phone prices. We know they're going to limit choices, and limiting choices means higher prices for Canadians. The Prime Minister promised to lower cell phone fees. They're sky high. He promised to lower grocery fees. They're sky high. When will the Prime Minister finally stop greedy CEOs from ripping off Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've actually seen cell phone bills decrease across the country by 25% over the past number of years, and we're going to continue to stand up for Canadian consumers. And indeed, I know the Minister is looking into the Competition Act to see if there needs to be referred on a number of things that are come forward. But we're going to continue to stand up for the middle class and people working hard to join it, which is why we raised corporate taxes, why we asked the wealthiest Canadians to pay a little more so we can invest more in younger Canadians, why we're continuing to step up on creating fairness for every generation with this budget, with the investments we're making, and with further investments as well.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Power to stop these greedy CEOs, but you do.
It's not enough to be ripping people off at the grocery store. Today we've learned that Loblaws is teaming up.
Colleagues, I know it's Wednesday and everybody is a little bit more primed for action, but it's really important for us to hear the questions and hear the answers.
The honourable member for Burnaby South. From the top, please.
Power to stop these greedy CEOs, but you do. I know the Conservatives don't like it, but we got to take on corporate greed.
It's not enough for Loblaws to be ripping people off at the grocery store. Today we've learned that Loblaws is teaming up with Rogers and Bell to block competition from other companies in their stores. This means less choice and higher cell phone bills. The Liberals are sitting on their hands. Will the Prime Minister finally stand up to the CEOs and support a full investigation into these allegations? I'd like to benefit from this opportunity to remind all members that when they will be asking questions and there are answers, that they go through the chair, please. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The member knows full well that we did make improvements to give more power to the Competition Bureau because we know that it's by ensuring competition amongst the various companies that Canadians will have better results and prices. And we also know that's important to continue to do follow-ups on these issues, and that's why the minister is asking the Competition Bureau to look at what's happening in terms of cell phone packages and Loblaws. It's a challenge we're always going to take seriously.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, normally the NDP leader is well worth ignoring, but I just can't help myself. He says that the Prime Minister acts like he has no power to stop all of these greedy CEOs from ripping off consumers. Who else has the power? Well, the guy that joined the government 2 years ago. He's been in power during the worst food price inflation in over 4 decades. Will the Prime Minister agree with me that his carbon tax coalition is nothing more than an anti-competitive price-fixing scheme that is costing Canadians at the grocery store?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see that the Conservative Party's opposition to the price on pollution is ideological and not concrete, because their opposition to the price on pollution means they don't care about fighting against climate change. Even as wildfires are already raging in different parts of the country, they have no plan to fight against climate change. And they do it in the name of affordability while ignoring that the Parliamentary Budget Officer actually showed that 8 out of 10 Canadian families do better with the money put in their pockets from the Canada Carbon Rebate than it costs them with the price on pollution.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has concluded that 60% of Canadians pay more in carbon tax costs than they get back in the phony rebates. 100% of middle-class Canadians pay more than they get back in the phony rebates. And now the Prime Minister wants to quadruple the tax, all at a time when he's preparing to hand over power to carbon tax Carney. Will the Prime Minister confirm if carbon tax Carney will follow through on his plan to hike the tax to 61 cents a litre?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that 8 out of 10 Canadian families in jurisdictions where the carbon price federal backstop applies do better off with more money in their pockets through the Canada Carbon Rebate checks that land in their bank accounts 4 times a year. That's money in their pockets that goes to the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, the cost of everything they need to raise their families. That is money in their pockets that the Leader of the Opposition would take away because of its ideological crusade against climate action.
Then I have Shefton.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Prime Minister's wacko carbon tax obsession is costing Canadians not just at the pump, but it raises the cost of home heating, of groceries, because of course if you tax the farmer who produces the food and the trucker who ships the food, you tax all who buy the food. It's a housing tax because it raises the cost of building materials that go into homes. With the report out today that 25% of young people had to go to a food bank in just 3 months, will he accept the common sense Conservative bill to take the tax off the farmers who produce our food?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition continues to make that argument even though he knows full well that farm fuels are 95% exempt from the price on pollution right across the country, Mr. Speaker. That is something that he ignores because of his ideological opposition to take any action in fighting climate change. Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, in Conservative ridings right across the country, people are worried about droughts, people are worried about floods, people are worried about wildfires that are more and more severe. Canadians need a clean plan to fight climate change, which is something he hasn't put forward while we are fighting climate change and putting money in people's pockets.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's carbon tax applies on barns, on grain drying, on fertilizers, on off-farm vehicles. It costs literally tens of thousands of dollars for many individual farmers, all of which gets passed on. But the Prime Minister, instead of defending his taxes, resorted to a really wacko and unhinged claim that if Canadians just paid more taxes, there would be suddenly less fires. I thought that water and not taxes put out fires. But maybe the Prime Minister can clarify, how high would his tax have to go for forest fires to stop?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are facing the impacts of the extreme weather events that come from climate change that are unfortunately getting worse and worse every year. That is why our government from 2015 onwards has stepped up in the fight against climate change, because not only are we reducing Canada's emissions to the lowest level outside the pandemic in 25 years, but we're also stepping up in the jobs and technological innovations that the world needs to successfully fight climate change. We will continue to fight climate change, Mr. Speaker, and put more money in people's pockets while he sits with his arms crossed and no plan.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He didn't answer my question. Now he says that his taxes are going to make Canada a high-tech wonderland. Before, his claim was that it was going to stop forest fires. It's him that made the link, not me. Obviously, I think the link between the two is absolutely ridiculous, because his tax is not an environmental plan. It's a money-collecting plan. It's a plan of government greed. So I'll ask the question again. He wants to hike the tax to 61 cents a litre. If it gets to that high and people are all starving in the streets, will that stop the forest fires?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the Leader of the Opposition's desire to make clever rhetorical points, he actually completely ignores the basic facts. The price on pollution is revenue neutral for the federal government. That means the money that comes in for the price on pollution, for the carbon tax, gets returned to the jurisdictions, and is why the Parliamentary Budget Officer found 8 out of 10 Canadian families in jurisdictions where the carbon price applies do better with the Canada carbon rebate that comes in 4 times a year than the price on pollution costs them. That's a plan to fight climate change and put money in people's pockets.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to be too clever for the Prime Minister, but he's the one who made the argument that high taxes would stop forest fires, and now he can't tell us how high the tax would go to put all the fires out. He went on now to say that his tax is revenue neutral. Well, you don't have to be too clever to read the government's own published documents, which shows that he has collected $2 billion more in taxes than he's given back in rebates. That's why 100% of middle-class Canadians pay more than they get back. So once again, will he tell those middle-class people how high the tax would have to go for the fires to stop?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we just saw is climate denialism at its finest. The fact is, as global emissions rise, as carbon intensity in the atmosphere increases, extreme weather events like wildfires, droughts, and floods will simply become more and more frequent. Now, his plan is to do nothing, Mr. Speaker, and let future generations fend for themselves. Our plan is not only to reduce our emissions, but to create the solutions that the world needs while we lead on fighting climate change, bringing down emissions, and growing the economy.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. A new study from the OQLF has established that French as a working language has gone down from 90% of young people to 58%, 64 rather, to 60%. Does the Prime Minister recognize that his linguistic policies are not at all stopping the decline in French and it has weakened it? Or can he address the perverse insults that were made to Quebec scientists? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are the first federal government to recognize that we have a responsibility in particular to protect French in Quebec. Yes, we are concerned with the decline of French that we're seeing across the country, including in Quebec. And that is why we are here to invest, to partner with the Quebec government to ensure that we are protecting the French fact in Quebec and official languages across our country. We're going to continue to be there to defend French, not for political ends like the Bloc is doing, but because it's the right thing to do for our country and our future. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals admitted that they're responsible, but they've acted in the opposite. They have not supported. They gave money to Anglophones in Quebec to protect them from a French assimilation. If the Prime Minister is so concerned for Quebec, can he stop objecting the Bill 96 in Quebec and allow Quebec to manage its linguistic laws? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Official Languages Act protects linguistic minorities across our country, and obviously, well, we want to protect Francophone minorities outside of Quebec, and also we have a responsibility to protect both official languages in a bilingual country and to protect all linguistic minorities, and we're going to continue to do so. But it doesn't prevent us from doing everything we can to protect French. It's not the Anglophone minority in Quebec that is being threatening French in Quebec. We're going to continue to fight to protect French in Quebec, across the province and across Canada. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of housing, which has doubled. But today, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a damning report that showed that after the Prime Minister promised he would eliminate chronic homelessness, it's actually gone up 38%, and the number of people living in unsheltered locations is up 88%. This after he spent $500 million on homelessness programs. So if it costs $500 million for him to drive up homelessness, how much would it cost to drive it down?
Wow. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, whether it's the pandemic, whether it was global inflation, whether it was international economic situations, we've seen more and more Canadians suffering, including from the opioid and toxic drug epidemic that the Leader of the Opposition continues to attack and vilify. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we've invested billions in countering homelessness, and we're going to continue to invest in eliminating encampments and supporting Canadians and communities, in vulnerable communities across the country. The Leader of the Opposition solution is to do less to fight homelessness, to invest less in vulnerable people. That's what he's doing when he votes against our current budget.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Again, he brags about his billions in spending. Mr. Speaker, people can't live in billions. They live in homes, and his billions build bureaucracies that block those homes. In 2015, there were 284 homeless people in Halifax. Now, there's 1,211. Wow. There are over 30 homeless encampments in Halifax alone. 10 years ago, there were 3,000 Quebecers who were homeless. Now it's 10,000. Why is it that the more he spends, the worse things get?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government has chosen to invest to support Canadians through difficult times. We saw it through the pandemic, where we stepped up to put money in Canadians' pockets, money in community organizations, money in businesses and restaurants, in mom-and-pop shops right across the country, and we came out of it stronger economically. We restored full employment faster than the United States. We know that investing when people need supports is the right way to build for the future. Confident countries invest in themselves. What the Leader of the Opposition is proposing is austerity and cuts to programs at exactly the time that Canadians need them.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians are already living through austerity, according to a PBO report. It has shown that since the Prime Minister promised to eliminate homelessness, it has increased by 38%. The number of homeless people in Quebec has risen from 3,000 to 10,000, Mr. Speaker. Yes, true, he's spending more money, that he's making everything more expensive. But when will he recognize that big government in Ottawa will never end homelessness? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, no one in this country thinks that a Conservative government that that will cut and offer austerity will help fight homelessness in our country. That's not how things work. It takes investment in housing that is affordable. It takes investment in programs to support people who are homeless. It takes investment in programs based on compassion and data to fight drug issues. This is the investment that is necessary. But he's just proposing cuts and austerity while Canadians are suffering. But we are here to invest in vulnerable communities. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Devastating reports in one day demonstrate the NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. First, we had Food Banks Canada and the Salvation Army that say record numbers are forced to go to food banks, that over half of people are worse off than they were a year ago. And now the PBO says there is more homelessness. There's more homelessness and hunger. He's got three explanations. One, he can blame the rest of the world for his mistakes. Two, he can promise more of the spending that caused the problem. Or three, he can own up and admit that he caused the misery Canadians are living.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative leader likes to going around saying Canada is broken, we choose instead to invest in Canadians, invest in supporting food banks, invest in community organizations that are on the front lines of supporting vulnerable Canadians, investing in the kinds of programs that are lifting Canadians up, like the 2 million vulnerable seniors who are now accessing health care, dental care for the first time. 100,000 people in just 22 days have gotten dental care when the Conservative Party has consistently voted against it and indeed tried to block it both in this House and across the country. We will continue to be there for Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton Strathcona.
Ireland, Spain, and Norway announced that they will soon recognize the State of Palestine. This is a crucial step towards peace and justice for Palestinians and Israelis. But Canada is missing in action. In February, New Democrats asked this government to recognize the State of Palestine. They refused, and they turned their backs on Palestinians and Israelis who are looking for peace and justice in their region. The Prime Minister can take a stand today. Will he join with the consensus of international community and recognize the State of Palestine?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we urgently need to build a credible path towards lasting peace. We oppose efforts by the Netanyahu government to reject a two-state solution. At the same time, Hamas, a terrorist group, currently controls areas in Gaza and has not laid down its arms or released its hostages. We are prepared to recognize the State of Palestine at the right time, not necessarily as the last step along the path. We were pleased to be able to support the NDP motion of a number of months ago. We will continue to work forward on promoting peace and working towards stability in the Middle East.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
Last week, I met with the Tumikulut Cpac daycare in Iqaluit, a daycare that provides culturally appropriate care in Inuktitut. Because of a lack of funding, they are on the verge of closing. In 2022, the Liberals promised millions of dollars to Nunavut daycare. The funding is taking too long to make its way to Tumikulut Cpac daycare. Will the Liberals ensure Tumikulut does not fall through the cracks and get the urgent funding it needs to stay open?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Investing in early learning and child care right across the country that is affordable, that is high quality, and that is available for families is one of the cornerstones of this government's policy of the past few years. We've worked closely with provinces and territories to deliver, to make sure that money is delivered on the ground where it is needed the most. I will follow up on this particular case and make sure that the government of Nunavut is passing through the money and is accessing all the funds necessary so that child care in the north and indeed right across the country continues to be delivered as the social program and economic program that it is.
The Honourable Member from Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, As a family doctor who delivered close to 500 babies, I am concerned about access to reproductive choice. Claiming to support reproductive choice is not enough. We must pass legislation that makes it fully accessible to all. The Pharmacare Act is a start. It will provide free contraception to over 9 million patients. Unfortunately, our Conservative colleagues oppose it. They also oppose access to safe abortion. Will the Prime Minister reaffirm his government's promise to defend a woman's reproductive rights in spite of the opposition's efforts to deny it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Vancouver Centre for her decades of leadership. We will always support a woman's right to access reproductive health care, both in our words and in our policy. The Leader of the Opposition pretends to be pro-choice, but supports his Conservative caucus members tabling anti-abortion legislation. He cannot have it both ways. If the opposition leader truly believed in the right to choose, he'd condemn any effort to restrict reproductive choice and freedom, including from within his own caucus.
Hear, hear.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, the cost of housing has doubled because of his inflationist spending and the bureaucracy that he's funding, which is preventing construction. In Le Soleil today, we learned that those who have not yet found a home for the coming year are panicking, and there's a major risk that many people will be forced to camp this summer because they can't find a home. Is this Prime Minister's plan, after doubling the cost of housing, to provide tents to people who are going to have to go camping because they can't find a home? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, I'm happy to be able to talk about our plan, which assures fairness for every generation. Our housing plan will build 3.87 million new housing units across the country by cutting bureaucracy, by changing zoning, and by lowering construction costs, and by using public land. We are going to bring back the dream of access to a home for young Canadians by helping them save money tax-free, and by allowing renters to use their history when asking for a mortgage. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The inflation that is hurting Canadians is the result of the inflationist and centralizing spending of this Prime Minister. No surprise. What's surprising is that the Bloc voted for $500 billion of that spending. And, you know, this isn't the money that's already in the main estimates. This is money that's doubling fees for consultants, for example, including money for ArriveScam. Does the Bloc Liberal government realize that more money for the federal government means less money for Quebecers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see the Conservative leader completely ignoring facts and data in all of the rhetorical arguments that he's putting forward. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that the inflation, which has hit the entire planet, hurt Canada less than many other countries, and now over the last 4 months, inflation has gone down because of the investments and because of the sound, responsible financial management of our government. We will continue to be there to invest in Canadians while lowering inflation. That's what he doesn't understand.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, inflation in housing is worse in Canada than in any other G7 country. It's the second worst of the 40 OECD countries. But the question was about inflationary spending and centralizing spending that the Bloc continues to vote for. The Bloc Québécois has become a socialist party that wants to increase the size of the government, but they're focused on the federal government. So that means a bigger federal state and less autonomy and money for Quebecers. And why is it only the Conservatives who are defending Quebecers?
Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Now, Mr. Speaker, we all remember what these Conservatives do when it comes to Quebec. We saw the cuts to social health services and healthcare. We saw the cuts in the health transfer. We saw the cuts to arts and culture, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives are standing up today to attack the Bloc Québécois for not properly defending Quebec. Well, that's ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that the Bloc is to defend Quebecers. They do it less well than the federal government can do it, but the attacks from the Conservatives against Quebecers are a bit ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Well, here. The Liberal Bloc Party. A beautiful coalition, a beautiful coalition. Now the Prime Minister, the so-called Federalist Prime Minister, says that the Bloc defends Quebecers. What? What? And the Bloc is voting for centralizing spending here in Ottawa. What? What is going on here? Everything is confused, Mr. Speaker. Isn't it time to forget this ridiculous coalition and replace it with a Conservative government that has a lot of common sense? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, apparently, unlike the leader of the Conservatives, I believe fundamentally that every member in this House is there to defend the interests of the people who elected them. That is our individual responsibility and collective responsibility. Every person here in this House is doing that. Yes, people know very well that I disagree with the ultimate goal of the Bloc Québécois, but at the same time, we can certainly find moments where we can work together with respect to protect the French language, to create economic growth in Quebec. We are there to work together, not to play political games and to just attack everyone. That's what the Conservatives are here to do. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, in the western St. Lawrence Gulf, there's only one fishery that's open. That's crustaceans, crab, and lobsters. All the other fisheries are closed or in crisis. However, the member for Gaspésie and the Minister of Fisheries is closing all kinds of fishery areas throughout the region. What is the Prime Minister saying to fishers who have to go back home to port and who are seeing another fishing season disappear in front of their eyes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, we understand the distress and the challenges that fishers are facing in Eastern Canada. We're seeing a very difficult moment because of climate change, because of changing and diminishing maritime populations. We are going to be there to support the fishers, but part of being there to support them is also protecting our international markets and filling out our scientific responsibilities and in respecting international law. We are going to be there to help the fishers, and we are also going to be there to protect endangered species and our trade agreements in the future. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I'll give him another chance, Mr. Speaker. It's because of the right whales that the fishery areas are closed. Everyone wants to protect the whales. But the government is threatening them by opening up new areas for oil exploration. Fishers, scientists, the Bloc Québécois have proposed some ideas. The department's not listening, the minister isn't listening, and the fishing sector is facing an unprecedented crisis. Does the Prime Minister believe that fishers should respect the minister? Does he have trust in the minister? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are working closely with industry, with scientists, and with our international partners to manage a very, very difficult situation. We understand the extent to which this is a difficult situation for fishers, and we are going to continue to be there for them. And we are going to make sure that the decisions that we're taking are going to respect the interest of the industry and also the environment, obviously, and will protect endangered species. It's a very complex issue, Mr. Speaker, but we're going to be there not with simplistic solutions, but with the necessary support to ensure the long-term success of our resort. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. After 9 years of this Prime Minister and the Bloc Québécois, Canadians are exhausted. They don't have any money left in their pockets, and many are hungry. They need vacations, but it's too expensive. The Prime Minister has doubled the national debt. That has increased the price of everything. Interest rates have gone up as well. So that's why the Conservatives, the common sense Conservatives, are proposing a vacation on gas and diesel taxes to allow Quebecers to have a break. Will the Prime Minister have the common sense to accept this great idea? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers know too well what happens when the Conservatives bring in austerity measures when it comes to affordability and the cost of living. That's why we will continue to invest in families. We will continue to be there to help seniors. We will continue to be there to help children with a school food program. We are going to be there to create more daycare spaces. All of these are proposals that the Conservatives have voted against. They will cut in social programs, cut social services, cut help for families, because of their ideology of austerity. We'll be there for Quebecers and Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The NDP Liberal Prime Minister has implemented a wacko and radical drug decriminalization and handout program. He's literally handed out tax-funded opioids. The result has been tragic, a nearly tripling in the number of overdose deaths, and where the policy has been most deeply implemented, in BC, a 300% increase in overdose deaths. Prime Minister did a last-minute reversal on decriminalization in that province, only to vote back in favor of decriminalization yesterday. Isn't it his plan to decriminalize across Canada if he's re-elected?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the fact is we will continue to be there responsibly on a science-based, evidence-based approach that works with jurisdictions on the tools they need to counter the growing opioid and toxic drug epidemic. I understand the ideological desire by Conservatives to simply look at every problem as if it's a nail because all they have is a hammer. We're going to continue to be there investing in community supports. We're going to be there to continue to work with jurisdictions who want to help people struggling with addictions, and we will continue to be there to ground in science and evidence.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Imagine you're a young couple in a hospital welcoming your newborn into the world, and all of a sudden you smell meth or crack smoke coming down the hallway. That was the reality up until just a few weeks ago in British Columbia, when because the Prime Minister and the NDP had decriminalized crack. And if those parents had asked the nurse to stop it, they would have said, no, that can't happen. These drug uses are now legal. We're introducing the Safe Hospitals Act to ban all hard drugs from hospitals. Will the Prime Minister support it? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, to be clear, those things are already illegal in hospitals. We know that nurses and hospital staff need to feel safe in their work environment, and it's our government that has invested billions of dollars into the healthcare system to ensure Canadians have access to the best care possible, and support goes to our frontline health workers. The important difference between the Conservative Party and us is that while they look to criminalize the most vulnerable struggling with addictions, we are rolling up our sleeves and working with all levels of government to put an end to this crisis and help these most vulnerable Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa-Vanier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For many, costs are an obstacle that prevent access to health care, particularly when it comes to reproductive health care. The right to access to an abortion is threatened in Canada by the March Against Abortion, which took place here in Ottawa, encouraged and followed by Conservative members who promised again to restrict access to health care. Young people here in Ottawa-Vanier are worried. They want to know, what is the government doing to fight against these threats on the rights of women? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for Ottawa-Vanier for her very hard work and her leadership. Across the way, the Conservative members are proposing anti-choice legislation. They participate in rallies against abortion, and the Conservative leader not only refuses to oppose his caucus, but even voted with them on a bill that would have classified the fetus as a person. Women have the right to choose, and that's why we are making prescription contraceptives free, and we will continue to defend the right to choose.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister's wacko crime policies, extortions are up 218% nationally, 263% in Ontario, and roughly the same in Alberta, and roughly 400% in British Columbia. The Prime Minister passed a law that would allow extortionists out of jail faster after they've used a gun. Will he reverse himself and support my common sense Conservative Deputy Leader's bill to crack down on extortionists and put them in behind bars to stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with the Conservative leader's approach on crime is it consistently gets struck down by the courts. That's what we saw through 8 years of Stephen Harper, which actually led Canadians worse off than before. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, our approach on cracking down on criminals while at the same time making sure our communities are safer by strengthening the gun laws the Conservatives are continually voting against in the pocket of the gun lobby is not keeping Canadians safe. That's why we work with the provinces on bail reforms that are going to make sure we're keeping Canadians safe while making sure we're charter compliant.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was not forced by the courts to allow career car thefts to do their sentences in their living rooms, playing Grand Theft Auto. He chose to do that through his bill C5. He chose to bring in catch and release bail through C75. He chose to pass a law allowing Paul Bernardo out of Max Penn. Mr. Speaker, now we can make another choice. Instead of trying to ban Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle, will he put extortionists who use machine guns in jail?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has continually pledged to make assault-style weapons legal again. We have banned them for the past 4 years, and we will continue to make sure that they stay banned in this country, while the Leader of the Opposition wants to bring back assault-style weapons to our communities and to Canadians from coast to coast to coast. That's not how to keep this community safer. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, in the name of protecting Canadians from crime, he's willing to suspend their fundamental freedoms by using the notwithstanding clause to override the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's not responsible, and it makes you wonder what other rights is he going to come after on Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, military-style assault rifles have been banned since the 70s. The Prime Minister held a press conference with a big, scary gun on the front of his podium 4 years ago and still hasn't been able to figure out how to ban that scary-looking cartoon gun with 1,500 guns under amnesty to this day. And he says he won't be able to figure out how to do it for at least another 3 years. So, will the Prime Minister stop his made-in-Hollywood approach to crime and actually lock up the hard criminals so that we can stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for the past 4 years, it has been illegal to buy, sell, or use assault-style weapons in this country, and that is exactly what the Conservative leader has promised to overturn if he gets elected to government in this country. The reality is he wants to bring back assault-style weapons in this country after we banned them back in 2000. We're going to continue to be there to make sure Canadians are safe while he stays in the pocket of the gun lobby. That's not what Canadians want. That's not even what Conservative Canadians want, but he's going to do it anyway.
The honourable member from Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, while our government works to provide pharmacare, expand childcare, introduce a national school food program, and build housing, Conservative MPs are giving speeches at anti-abortion rallies. Reproductive health is health. Women have the right to choose when and if they start a family. With members of this House threatening to take this right away from Canadians, what is this government doing to strengthen reproductive rights?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Davenport is right. Reproductive health is health, and abortion is health care. The Leader of the Opposition pretends to care about freedom, but whose freedom was he defending? By threatening to suspend Canadians' charter rights, by voting to restrict abortion, or by removing the right to vote from thousands of Canadians when he was Minister of Democratic Institutions. That is the very opposite of freedom. We will never back down from defending all Canadians' fundamental rights and freedoms.
Hear, hear. The honourable member from Windsor West.
2 years after the illegal border blockade at Ambassador Bridge, the Liberals are stiffing the City of Windsor by not paying back the city for costs for handling this mess. Canadians are used to being ripped off by big grocery stores and big telecoms, but now they can add the Liberals to that list. And where were the Conservatives while this happened? On the sidelines, cheering on this harm. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister asked Windsor to protect our country, so why is he rewarding this attack on the economy, public safety, and frontline workers by not paying Windsorites back the money that they're owed?
Hear, hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member knows full well that we paid back a significant amount of the costs incurred by the City of Windsor during the Conservative-supported convoy. There is a matter of a dispute around whether those legal fees, were to be covered by the federal government. And I know the Minister of Public Safety is meeting with the Mayor of Windsor tomorrow, and I'm sure that'll be on the discussion. In the meanwhile, we've continued to stand up for Windsor with historic investments in jobs and opportunities for Windsorites that, quite frankly, Conservatives continue to stand against, while we will continue to be there for the people of Windsor.
Hear, hear. The honourable member from Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, the University Network for Human Rights published a 100-page report concluding that Israel's actions in Gaza constitute genocide. Now, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor is seeking arrest warrants for both Hamas terrorists and Israeli leaders. There's no equivalency being made. These individuals may simply be accused of breaking international law, which the court is tasked to uphold. Will the PM support the ICC's process, as is the will of this Parliament from March 18th?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, obviously we're closely monitoring the processes as they unfold at the ICC. We respect the independence of the court. There is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. One is a state, the other is a terrorist organization. As we've said from the beginning, all parties have a necessary obligation to comply with international law. In the meanwhile, an immediate ceasefire is urgently needed, and a lot more humanitarian aid needs to get in, and hostages need to be released. We will continue to stand for a two-state solution. We will continue to call for peace in the region.
Colleagues, that is the end of question period, but I wish to draw to the attention of members in the gallery.
Okay, I'm coming to you live from this back room here in the House of Commons. The chamber of the House of Commons is just on the other side. And I've got to tell you, something crazy is happening here. You need to share this video so that people who might not follow politics but care about democracy understand just how bad the situation here is in Ottawa and what needs to happen next. So, the Speaker of the House of Commons has been essentially found guilty of doing more partisan activity after a bunch of other errors. And I want to explain to you why this matters and what happens next. So the Speaker of the House of Commons for those of you who aren't familiar, is supposed to be like a neutral arbiter of the rules. They're not supposed to be partisan. They're supposed to make sure that the House of Commons functions, the rules are followed in a neutral, nonpartisan way. And in order for Canadian democracy to happen, that's a super critical role, right? Well, you'll remember like back a few months ago, the last Speaker of the House of Commons had to resign over an issue of a Nazi being recognized in the House of Commons. So he was replaced with somebody named Greg Fergus. Greg Fergus was actually the parliamentary secretary to Justin Trudeau. So a very partisan person who is now in the role. So he was elected into this role with like super crazy partisanship. Now, he's done several things, including kicking the leader of the opposition Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, out of the House of Commons. And it gets worse today. So let me break it down for you on how we got to this point. So a few months ago, you'll remember that Greg Fergus recorded a video for a Liberal convention in his speaker's robes. That's super, when I say that, you understand how partisan that is, right? And he was actually found guilty of doing that. And then he said, oh, you know, it was just a mistake. I mean, I didn't know, which I didn't buy. We thought he should resign over that. But nonetheless, the NDP, the Liberal coalition partners, they kept him in the role. They kept him in the role. I don't understand why the NDP would do that. Like, come on. No, they propped up the government there. Okay. So then you'll remember that afterwards, he went to Washington in his speaker's capacity and gave a speech reminiscing about how fun it was and wonderful it was to be a young Liberal. So he was talking about partisan activity at an international event in his role as a speaker after he did this thing, okay? Then he asked a former Liberal MP to write an op-ed about him. Okay, so like this guy clearly has a history of partisanship, and you'll remember that then he kicked Pierre Poilievre out of the House of Commons a couple of weeks ago, which is kind of unprecedented. The speaker kicking the leader of an opposition party during question period out of the House of Commons. Now, today, and this is what I need you to share, after all of this, look at what happened. On the Liberal Party website, there is an advertisement for Greg Fergus. This is on the Liberal Party website. And let me read to you what the event details are, okay? Let me read this to you. When Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives proposed reckless policies that would risk our health, safety, and pocketbooks, the Liberal team is focused on making life blah, blah, blah. So this is a partisan advertisement. It talks about an event being held by the Speaker of the House of Commons as being part of the Liberal team, and it actually openly craps on the leader of the opposition party. How could anybody say that this guy is neutral and nonpartisan? Come on. Now, I have to give credit for once to the Bloc Québécois. They're out saying no. This guy has to go. He has to resign. He's clearly partisan. But do you know, guess who is undecided on this? Take a wild guess. The NDP. Of course the NDP are. Is there any difference between the Liberals and the NDP? Of course not. And if the NDP were smart, right, which they're not, they would get rid of this guy. It would help them politically. It would help democracy. It would be tactically the right thing to do. It would, above everything else, it would help Canadian democracy have some sort of semblance of doing something that resembles work, right? You can't have a guy this on top of everything else that he's done, including kicking the leader of the House of Commons or of the opposition out during question period. Then he lets a partisan event, be advertised on the Liberal website where he's described as part of the Liberal team, and then he craps on the Conservatives? Come on. He's got to resign. He has got to resign. Now, you're asking, well, what are you guys doing about it? This morning, one of my Conservative colleagues raised something called a point of privilege in the House of Commons, essentially calling on the Speaker to resign. We are now waiting to see what the NDP are going to do with this. And it should be a no-brainer. Like, there are some things that transcend partisanship. In fact, the Liberal Party should be, the Liberals should be kicking him out if they cared about democracy, if they cared about the traditions of the House of Commons, right? They should be going, you know what? They should have some shame. This guy's got to go. It's like, this is 3 major strikes. He's out. He's got to go. But now we're waiting to see what the NDP are going to do, because if there is a motion in the House of Commons to vote to get him to resign, which there already has been, and the Liberals vote and the NDP voted to prop him up. If there is a motion, the NDP are going to need to, like, basically say he needs to go. So, like, why? Like, if you're an NDP, like, please share this with somebody who votes NDP. Why would the NDP, if you're voting NDP and you oppose the Liberals, why are you perpetually propping up a Liberal partisan speaker? This is the level of craziness that I see in my job here every day. Why would the NDP, why would they keep him in place? Like, it blows my mind. This guy needs to go. The place where we're supposed to be debating laws, holding the government to account, is being presided over by somebody who has, how many strikes now? How many strikes, Greg? Like, what have you learned? Like, was this like a nice Trudeau language where maybe I learned something by this? Help me out by sharing this video, because this is what, I represent close to 120,000 Canadians, and my job is to go in there and be able to debate, hold the government to account, discuss ideas, and have that debate being presided over by somebody who is at least notionally neutral, right? Instead, I have somebody who is a blatant partisan. A blatant partisan. He needs to resign. He needs to be replaced. This is crazy. This should be a no-brainer. Everybody should agree with this. This is about what should be for the good of democracy. Absolutely insane. Help me by sharing this video so that people know what's happening. People need to understand this. This affects you, because if your MP and your representative can't have their voice heard, what does that mean for you? It means your voice isn't heard. And that's the whole thing with democracy. It's an illusion that only works if our voices are able to be heard. And right now, you've got a partisan in the chair who, how many strikes does it take? He's got to resign. Help me get the word out. Share this video. Working hard for you in Ottawa. Have a great day.
I'm standing here today in a room filled with law-abiding citizens, sport shooters, hunters, and collectors, which represents a community that has always upheld the highest standards of responsibility and safety. You have to undergo rigorous background checks, adhere to strict licensing requirements, and participate in ongoing education about the safe handling and storage of firearms. In fact, as you know, it is the firearms community itself which often leads the way in advocating for and implementing safety measures. You understand that safety is the bedrock upon which responsible firearm ownership is built. Yet nowhere in the Liberal government's narrative on gun control do we see this acknowledged. Instead of being acknowledged for their dedication to public safety, law-abiding firearms owners who engage in their sport or who collect firearms with passion and respect for the law find themselves unjustly portrayed as part of a problem. It's a narrative that is not only unfair but counterproductive in achieving genuine public safety. Now this, friends, is regrettable because Canada has a public safety crisis which is being fueled by the Liberal government's ideological soft-on-crime approach. The Liberal government has not only failed to achieve their declared objective in enhancing of public safety, they have actually undermined the ability of our police and corrections officers to combat, control, and rising violent crime. Yet, even though the Liberals are keenly aware of these realities, they continually turn a blind eye and insist on playing politics by pandering to the fears of their ill-informed base. Now, I saw this in living color with the Minister of Public Safety when he appeared before the Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Veteran Affairs, and said, and I quote, "I don't think hunters or sports groups oppose this legislation." Let me repeat that. The Minister of Safety said, "I don't think hunters or sports groups oppose this legislation." I would like to know whether any of you in this room did not oppose Bill C-21. Now, we've heard that in the House and the Chamber. I'm not allowed to call them liars. The Speaker has reminded me of that. This tells you everything you need to know about this government. They have blatantly and repeatedly misrepresented the truth. This will have no impact on gun crime, and just gratuitously targets 650,000 law-abiding Canadians, making them the de facto scapegoats for a bigger societal problem. What Canadians are going to find out in the years ahead, that the policies like the firearms buyback program and Bill C-21's ban on the purchase and sale of legal, already tightly controlled handguns will not make Canadians any safer. This is a complete sham. The other thing that Canadians are going to find out, and are already finding out, is that accomplishing nothing under the Liberal government costs an awful lot of money. While the Trudeau government told taxpayers in 2021 that the program would cost $8.8 million. Now, one firearm has been bought back and we have spent $44 million of your tax dollars. At this rate, we are headed, as I said, for another multi-billion-dollar boondoggle which will do nothing to improve public safety. Nothing. If left to stand, it will destroy shooting sports in Canada. So what can gun owners do? What lobbying advice or advocacy technique can I share with you today that will enable you to turn this public policy train wreck around? To be honest, I can think of only one thing, and it is not to send more emails to your member of parliament, although you absolutely need to continue to do that. It is not to make more phone calls.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Immediately conduct a study into the flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Conservative Party of Canada members of Parliament. So I guess my question would be, is this member, if she's really serious here, because she said talk the talk, walk the walk. So I was hoping we could add a couple of amendments, obviously, to the Prime Minister's $6,000 a night mystery, or $6,000 a night stay in London, as well as his very extravagant trip to Jamaica that cost taxpayers, I'm not sure how much that was, but I mean, if we're going to walk the walk and we're going to talk about being very mindful of taxpayers' money, I think we should be adding that into this study.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Question Period Canada. How y'all doing? We recognize Michelle Ferreri from the introduction. Well, this is the lead into one of the committee meetings. This one also gets out of hand. I've been trying to tell you these committee meetings are off the hook. We get to see some of the most villainous Liberals, some of the most heroic Conservatives, and whatever the NDP are, call them what you want. The Bloc is in there sometimes too. We don't include that very often. Anyway, this meeting gets out of hand. Michelle Ferreri has a lot to say, so does Ikra Khalid and Brenda Shanahan. They're brutal. Anyways, let's take a peek at this wild committee video. Let's check it out.
Thank you. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll address this very, very quickly. A number of points here that have been raised by my colleagues. First and foremost, nobody is saying that the RCMP should not come here to this committee to be held accountable for and to help us understand how this investigation has been ongoing. What we're trying to say with this amendment is that, look, the RCMP sent us a letter. We are respecting their jurisdiction, their limitations. And if our committee genuinely wants answers rather than grandstanding, then we do need to delay when they come in. Because if we have them in within this week while the investigation is still ongoing, we are not going to get answers as members of this committee want. So to me, on a practical basis, it makes no sense whatsoever for us to haul them in only to have them say again and again, we can't answer this question, we can't answer this question, we can't answer this question, all because there is active, ongoing investigation, which we all want to be concluded. And none of us should be wanting to politicize an independent investigation by the RCMP. And that is why we are introducing this amendment. And I'm really hoping that we can go to a vote, Chair.
Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor.
Chair, and I'm glad that we're able to get back to the motion that I wish to propose here. I think members heard my preamble and the concern that I have about this flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party. These members of Parliament who like to talk a good talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, it's a different story. So I move the following motion, that the committee immediately conducts a study into the flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party of Canada Member of Parliament, who expensed their travel costs, hotels, and per diems to travel to Quebec City for the Conservative Party of Canada Partisan Convention in September 2023 as a matter of public interest and report its findings to the House. Et je l'ai en français aussi.
You have the floor, please.
Oh, thank you so much. So there's been a motion put forward again. I'm new to public accounts, so this is interesting to me that a motion has been put forward by a Liberal member worried about taxpayers' money, and it's interesting, to put it mildly. After we were just trying to get the RCMP to testify here, and the Liberal did not want that before committee, about an app that we know cost at least $60 million, but more. And this motion that the committee immediately conduct a study into the flagrant disregard for public funds exercised by Conservative Party of Canada members of Parliament. So I guess my question would be, is this member, if she's really serious here, because she said talk the talk, walk the walk. So I was hoping we could add a couple of amendments, obviously, to the Prime Minister's $6,000 a night mystery or $6,000 a night stay in London, as well as his very extravagant trip to Jamaica that cost taxpayers. I'm not sure how much that was, but I mean, if we're going to walk the walk and we're going to talk about being very mindful of taxpayers' money, I think we should be adding that into this study. And Tofino, thank you so much to my NDP colleague here. Thank you. I think that we should be adding a few things here if we're going to be doing this, because I think that would only be fair if we're going to be talking about spending taxpayers' money. I think there's also like a green slush fund, if we wanted to do that on taxpayers' money. I mean, there's that $4.5 billion mental health transfer that never happened, and then you have the money that was spent on to reduce chronic homelessness that hasn't been spent. Should we go on and on here, Chair, on terms of misuse of taxpayers' money? Right now, we're spending more on servicing the debt in this country because of the Prime Minister's mismanagement of taxpayers' money than we are on health care. So I'm just, if the Liberal member is truly serious about this, that would be a really great thing, because I think absolutely, I think we absolutely as elected members of Parliament want to ensure that the money is accounted for and is being fiscally spent. So I think there's a lot of things we could add to this motion, and I'm curious to see if the member opposite is open to that, if she really wants to walk the walk. And obviously, let's throw in Arrive scam, because again, $60 million, that's being low of what is expected when it was supposed to cost $80,000. So thank you.
So, gang, it would seem to me that Michelle Ferreri is ready to put Pierre Poilievre's numbers up against Trudeau's. I don't think Trudeau's going to want to do that. We'll see what happens. I'd like to take this opportunity now to invite you to subscribe, like, share, get notified. We do a live broadcast here all the time. It's a fun community, a great chat room. Come and join us. That's it. Back to the video.
Very, very curious motion, I might say, and somewhat surprising because just last week, the Liberals filibustered a meeting on a Rive scam for about 45 minutes to an hour to avoid hearing from witnesses, all for the supposed intent of working out a work plan that this committee had agreed to and that the chair had agreed to and had put things into play. So it's rather curious, comical if it wasn't so serious that now all of a sudden Ms. Shanahan, the Liberal caucus, National Caucus chair, has decided to put forward such a motion about another opposition party's attendance at a National Caucus meeting. Especially interesting, Ms. Shanahan moved this motion, Liberal Caucus chair. Interesting about her $5,149.02 expense for regional or national caucus meetings in Whitehorse. So that was $5,149. Another $1,257 for Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland. So I see Ms. Shanahan is
okay.
Rocky.
Order. Just 1 second. Yes, just
Chair.
1 second, Mr. Nader. Again, we have a nice long list, and I will add people to it. You have the floor again, Mr. Nader.
I do have a point of
order.
order.
Oh, pardon me. I thought you were. Pardon me. Yes, Madame Khalid.
Thank you. I would encourage our members to talk on the relevance. Like, in fact, members on the Conservative side have listed out things that have been litigated in committees, front, back, center, all of it. What this specific motion is asking for is brand spanking new. It is something that has not been discussed, and I think that members should stick to this because at the end of the day, all parliamentarians are accountable. That
is true. I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Nader. You seem to be objecting to him tying it to the national national caucus, and I'm sure Mr. Nader is going to get to the point that there was a national caucus meeting in Quebec. Do you have a point of order, Mr. Desjardins, or you?
Not a point of order.
Okay, then I'll.
Speaking list.
Very good, Mr. Nader, you have the floor, please.
Sorry, am I on the speaking list, Chair? Sorry.
You are now.
Okay.
You are now.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Where I was before I was interrupted by points of order from the Liberals was articulating that Ms. Shanahan, as National Caucus Chair, did expense significant amounts of money to attend caucus meetings. I would note further that the members' bylaw, which is a matter that falls under BOE, the Board of Internal Economy, is the one that would be responsible for this. I see Ms. Shanahan wants to distract from the government's disastrous Arrive scam ineptitude, where an app that should have cost a few $100,000 is ballooned to $60 million of taxpayer dollars, an RCMP investigation. So I can see why she wants to distract from that. But the fact is that the board rules, the members' bylaws permit members to attend national caucus meetings, which are typically all-day events, typically held at different points in time. We call them caucus retreats, we call them caucus meetings, but they are caucus matters. As some colleagues may know, may not know, that in a past life, I have been working on a long delayed PhD dissertation on caucus meetings, and so I do have some familiarity with caucus meetings from all parties, frankly, from a number of decades gone by. And so I would point out, first of all, that this is a matter that is there. It's members attend caucus meetings. That's part of our parliamentary functions. And frankly, if we look at past speakers' rulings, we've actually seen various speakers, including Mr. Speaker Regan, a Liberal speaker, not that it matters, but ruling on occasion in two parliaments ago that caucus meetings do indeed constitute a part of parliamentary functions. And so to all of a sudden the Liberals think that all of a sudden we're going to have some kind of investigation into the meetings of caucuses, it seems rather interesting, rather, again, comical given the timing that they want to do this. But obviously there's caucus meetings. They're held at various points in time. I know the Liberals enjoyed a wonderful caucus meeting in St. Andrews by the Sea. Perhaps Mr. Stewart can tell us about that lovely location. But they do happen at various points in the country, various locations, and matters happen. We follow the members' procedural bylaws that provide clarity and certainty. And expenses that are eligible are one thing, and expenses that aren't permitted. So the bylaw clearly states that national caucus meetings, regional caucus meetings are permitted, as we know from Ms. Shanahan's own expense claims about her attendance at various matters. So I really don't know what this is, especially since this is not an issue for public accounts. This is a Board of Internal Economy issue. But once again, what we're seeing here is a Liberal attempt to cover up. A Liberal attempt to cover up the malfeasance that we've seen with the Arrive can. And every meeting we've seen in these last few weeks, every time we see new allegations from whether it's Ehren O'Gorman as the current president or John Ozoski as the former president of the CBSA, a flagrant disregard for taxpayer funds, a complete disregard. We saw preferential...
Point of order, Chair. Just,
yes.
Yeah, just relevance to the motion, and I just want to point out that Mr. Nader expensing of $2,117 for
that's
a
not a point of order.
Convention.
So yes, guys, the committee meetings are wild. They're like that all the time. I invite you to watch all the videos. Also, I invite you to come and join our live show. We do the broadcasts of the question periods daily. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun community, a great chat room. So come and join us. You'll have a good time there and learn with us about Canadian federal politics. There's not many places better to learn than in question period. These committee meetings are...
Notorious serial killer Robert Pickton was injured in what is being described as a major assault at a Quebec prison over the weekend. Correctional Service Canada has confirmed his involvement in the incident on Sunday. Quebec Provincial Police say the 74-year-old was taken to hospital with injuries that are considered life-threatening. The remains or DNA of 33 women were found at his pig farm in BC. He was convicted of 6 murders back in 2007. He was also charged in 20 other killings but did not face trial. Police are continuing to investigate this assault.
The word precedent so that I can find this for future years in the transcript from Hans. We have found a loophole in the standing orders such that any committee now, if I understand the ruling correctly, any committee at the end of every meeting could suspend the meeting to essentially frustrate a 106.4 from being called over the summer, as an example. So you could call a meeting, but all of a sudden you're back in the suspension. I don't believe that that is the intention of the 106.4 rule, that it does not take precedence, that it is supposed to be subservient to a suspension. I don't believe that's the initial interpretation. If this is in fact true and a ruling that is confirmed here today, and perhaps even been done at other committee meetings, in the future, all committees have to do is suspend every meeting before there's a break, and you'll never really have to deal with the 106.4 in its material or substantive nature. So apologize for intervening on my friend, Mr. Davies, as I understand he waited a long time here to chat. But I felt required to put that on the record that future parliaments may use this power in a different way than what the government is intending to use it today, or perhaps in the same way, but maybe even more aggressively. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Mr. Davies,
Thank you. Thank you. I'd intended to speak to the point of order, so I'll briefly do that. Then I'll go back to this amendment, Mr. Chair, if I may. Mr. Chambers makes some good points. What I would add to this is there are different consequences that flow from a meeting being suspended versus being adjourned. And when a meeting is suspended, there are advantages that members can take from that. For instance, when you come to the next meeting, you just pick up where you left off, which for some parties' purposes may be advantageous. Second, you preserve the speaking order, which can be advantageous as well. I will point out that when the meeting was suspended last time, nobody objected to that. And sometimes parties want a meeting to be suspended for the purposes I just mentioned, and other times it should be adjourned. I agree with them, though, that were a future government to abuse the distinction between those two, that would be a cause for concern and would be up to, I think, the parties in Parliament to amend the standing orders to deal with such a situation. In my 15 years in Parliament, I have not seen any government of any stripe or any committee chair ever abuse that by suspending every meeting to prevent a 106. I'm going to speak briefly why I took the position I did on the 106, and it wasn't because I'm opposed to the substance of the motion to study money laundering, because I think that is a good thing to study, which I'll talk about just briefly in a moment. But it's because here's what I got when the 106 came in, which, by the way, I was not asked to sign, nor was I even aware of it going in. But I looked into this, and this is the advice I received. Information sent by the committee directorate regarding finances meeting on Friday. As the committee has a meeting that is currently suspended, it cannot simply convene a new meeting on a 106.4 request. It must first deal with the business from the suspended meeting, even it is to simply set that business aside and move on to the 106.4 meeting. So it goes on to say, in such a situation, the committee clerk would discuss with the chair in order for the chair to determine how best to proceed in the circumstances. And the clerk could suggest that the chair discuss with the vice chairs about the approach for the meeting. So I think it's quite clear that we had to begin this meeting because it had been suspended with the business under consideration. And it was open for us, though Mr. Chambers is correct. And I think this speaks to his point about how a future government could control this. If every meeting were to be suspended, it still is open to the committee members at the next meeting that was suspended to then adjourn that debate and address the 106. So a government can't stop 106s simply by suspending meetings. It'll always be open to the majority of members at the committee to end the suspended meeting and begin the 106 request, which we could have done today. Now, let me just speak briefly about the merits of this, which is the sub-amendment, which I'm going to say for the moment, it's not just restricted to Mr. Carney. The sub-amendment says to call the minister for an hour as well. So now when the Minister of Finance is called this committee, that leaves it pretty wide open to talk about any issue that one would put to the Minister of Finance. So I've been listening carefully to people's point of orders on what's relevant or not. Maybe the part about Mr. Carney might be relevant to Mr. Carney, but if the sub-amendment calls for having the minister come, I think there's much more latitude to speak. Here's why I have taken the positions I have today. I agree that money laundering and terrorist financing, sanctions, other measures is a critical issue that this committee should look at. But
Mr. Chair, on the point of order.
Mr. Lawrence.
Of course, in Parliament, you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly. And of course, you can't call someone a liar or say that they are lying. And calling someone's ethics is, in my view, analogous to that. And quite frankly, it just undermines the collaboration within this committee.
On that point of order, Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Turnbull.
No, on the same point of order.
I'll just say that my intervention was based on the interpretation that I have that Mr. Morantz doesn't want to follow the procedural rules of the committee. Perhaps he interprets them differently, but I think we had the advice of the clerk that was sent around to committee members in an email, and I'm glad to see that we upheld the procedural requirements and procedural rules of the House of Commons.
I didn't really hear too many point of orders in that. I let it go on, but I will say that I just hope that we continue to stay on topic. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Morantz.
Mr. Chair, could I just, with Mr. Morantz's indulgence, it's more of a point of clarification, might help us all. I'm looking at a notice of meeting from February 8th, 2024, which has statutory review of the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Financing Act, and there's 3 Department of Finance officials that are there. Just for my own benefit and for others, that may not be adequate, but did we or did we not have one meeting with officials on that? Did that meeting occur or didn't it? On that point of clarification, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chambers, on that point of clarification.
Thank you very much. My understanding, and perhaps the clerk could confirm, the committee has not agreed to undertake any study of the Proceeds of Crime and Money Laundering Act, as in there is no motion that has been adopted by the committee to review that act. What I believe occurred in February was a meeting where we invited individuals to discuss money laundering that we may decide to incorporate into a future study if the committee decides to embark upon a study of the Procedural Crime and Money Laundering Act, or to fulfill the statutory obligation to do so, but that the committee has not decided to embark on that statutory obligation to study that act, as in we have not agreed to accept the Minister of Finance's request because we have not adopted a motion as such. Thank you. Well, if I might, I'm reading from the transcript of the meeting.
Mr. Chair, do I have the floor?
I would just
still
say
on a
to
point
wait.
of order, or what are we doing?
Colleagues, I'd just say wait to be recognized before you speak. Just to, I guess, to clear up some of the points that have been brought up. Yes, officials were here to talk about money laundering once. That's correct, Mr. Davies. Mr. Chambers, you're also correct in the sense that no motion has been passed as of yet with regards to money laundering. And so that's where we're at today. I thought that's what the 106.4 today was for. Obviously, it was overturned. And while Mr. Chambers was trying to bring forward a motion on money laundering, and that's where we're at now. So I hope that clears up any of the points that have been brought up. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Morantz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, on the issue of the finance minister appearing at committee and her letter to the committee asking for the study, Conservatives have been trying to do their part. We did have that one meeting because Mr. Chambers acted on it. And Mr. Chambers, although the motion, he did try to introduce the motion, it is on notice. And so I think it would be appropriate to read the motion, Mr. Chambers' motion, which is on notice, at least into the record, so that Mr. Turnbull and Mr. Davies are both aware of it. So I'm going to do that right now. It says, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, and with regards to Section 72 of the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act, the committee undertake a study to review the act and the current situation regarding money laundering and terrorist financing.
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Turnbull.
Chair, my understanding is you can't move a motion.
I'm not moving it. I'm reading it into the record.
Mr. Morantz,
this is highly inappropriate. It's not relevant to the topic
Mr.
at hand.
Turnbull, it's Mr. Morantz is reading a motion into the record, not moving a motion currently. Mr. Morantz, you have the floor. I would just suggest to read the
Okay,
motion
so
again.
I wasn't sure where I left off, so I'll just start from the beginning, Mr. Chair, if that's all right. Pursuant to Standing Order 108 sub 2 with regards to Section 72 of the Proceeds
Point of order,
Crime.
Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Turnbull.
Chair, are you ruling that this is in order for Mr. Morantz to put on a motion during a debate on a sub-amendment?
Mr. Turnbull, as I indicated, Mr. Morantz is neither putting a motion on notice or moving a motion right now. He's reading into the record a motion that pertains to his remarks on the, because he has the floor right now. He did not indicate at all he would be moving or putting one on notice.
So, Chair, is that your ruling?
I'm not sure what ruling there is to say that Mr. Morantz is not moving a motion right now or putting one on notice. Neither of those things are happening, which is your question. Is Mr. Morantz allowed to read out a motion? Is he allowed to put it on notice, or is he allowed to move it? He's doing neither of the last two things. He's just reading out a motion as far as I've seen.
My understanding, just for clarification, is that if you're reading a motion on the record, that you're putting it on notice, and that is
on that
not
point of order, Mr. Chair.
appropriate given the fact that he's on a sub-amendment, which means he cannot put a motion on notice. So, Chair, I would like a ruling on that if possible.
On that point of order, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair? Oh, sorry.
Colleagues, so as per what the clerk clarified to me as well, you could either read to put on notice a motion or read to put into to move a motion. That, in my opinion, neither is being done right now. It's just simply Mr. Morantz reading a motion that is on notice and not moving it. That was not his intent, and Mr. Morantz can clear that up. If he is intending to move a motion, or is he intending to read it into the record, or is he intending on putting it on notice? But as far as I know, it already has been put on notice, and maybe Mr. Morantz can clarify if he's just reading it to the record or he's moving it.
Chair, if I may, I just would say that it's not relevant, though, to the sub-amendment. So how is he reading something into the record or allowed to do so that is not relevant? That's a legitimate point of order. I can refer to the standing order if you'd like, Chair, but I think you well know that relevance is a legitimate point of order, and so I'd like to call relevance.
So, Mr. Turnbull, that was not your question originally. Your original question to begin with was asking me about if he was allowed to move a motion or put it on notice. That was your original question. So what you have asked now is completely different from that. I will point that out. And I think given the discussion, Mr. Morantz is reading into the record a summary of where we're at. I know that he did mention the Minister of Finance in his remarks, based it back on the letter of money laundering and where we got here. So I feel that clarified what you were originally asking of. So I'll turn the floor back over to Mr. Morantz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I realize Mr. Turnbull's new to the committee, so I'll just point out to his attention that on Tuesday, March 19th, a motion was put on notice. This is the motion I'm just reading into the record. I'm not putting it on notice, and I'm not moving it, but I think it's relevant to the discussion of the sub-amendment, which calls for the Minister of Finance to appear at this committee. So that speaks to my intent with respect to reading the motion and relevance. So I'll continue. Pursuant to Standing Order 108 sub 2 with regards to Section 72 of the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Act, the committee undertake a study to review the act and the current situation regarding money laundering and terrorist financing in Canada. That as part of the study, the committee calls the the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance for no fewer than 2 hours, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada for no fewer than 2 hours, the Minister of Public Safety.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Turnbull.
I still cannot understand the relevance of this intervention in relation to the sub-amendment. It's not relevant. It's clearly not relevant to the sub-amendment on Mark Carney, which is what we're debating.
Mr. Turnbull, I will say this is, I think, the third time I'm answering to this. I did, in my intervention before this, explain that there was a tie-in that I felt between what Mr. Morantz was talking about with talking about the Minister of Finance, who is in the sub-amendment, tying it back to the letter that she had sent to this committee, to the chair, and that it's based on that relevance. So this is I think the third time. So I will turn the floor back over to Mr. Morantz again.
Chair, can I clarify?
Could I speak to the point of order briefly?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Davies.
It's my understanding that a motion is confidential until it's moved in committee. So that's why you can't read it in right now. It's either moved or it's not. It's confidential until it's moved. So Mr. Morantz can't simultaneously decline to move and respect the fact that the motion is confidential. This is a public meeting.
On the same point
just to clarify that point, Mr. Davies, as far as I know, the motion was put on notice publicly by Mr. Chambers. Am I correct in that?
No, the motion is, you can put it on notice. The motion is confidential. It's not to be spoken about in public until it's moved in committee, and I'd like the clerk to advise on that.
I could clarify, Mr. Chair, if I'm able.
Mr. Chambers, go ahead on that point of order.
Thank you very much. Just for a point of clarity or a point of information, Mr. Davies is in fact correct. You cannot do that. However, the sequence of events was the following. The motion was put on notice. It was distributed to committee members. In fact, I did read that motion into the record during that meeting. So it is already a matter of public record. So to the extent that Mr. Morantz is refreshing people's memories, I believe that's what he's doing, but perhaps for the benefit of Mr. Turnbull, who I don't believe was present at the meeting when it was read into the record, he may not have seen it before.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Yes, that's what I was talking about, that it was read into the record once before. So it is not a private motion at all. It has been read into the public record once before, and as far as I've seen, Mr. Morantz is just reiterating the same motion once again into the record. So, Mr. Morantz, I'll give you the floor again.
Mr. Chair, could we just hear from the clerk on that? I think it'd be helpful for all of us as committee members, because I don't know what the meaning of a motion being confidential before moved is. If you can talk about it repeatedly in a public meeting, I understand reading into the record. It's been read into the record. I don't think that gives license to abrogate the rule that a motion is confidential until moved. So could I hear from the clerk on that? What is the clerk's advice to the committee on this?
I can turn it over to the clerk to reiterate that, but once again, I will say that it's not a confidential motion because it's been moved, it's been read into the record publicly.
With respect,
once.
Mr. Chair, you're the vice chair. I want to hear from the clerk on this, please.
And I will.
I'll just,
Mr. Davies, I just asked to please be recognized before you speak. I will turn it over to the clerk now, so you can explain it.
Motions are indeed confidential when they are sent to me and before they are proposed in the committee by the member, and I will not distribute them to the media or to the public domain, only to the members of the committee. However, it has happened on every side that members will give notice of a motion by verbally stating what the motion is and reading it out loud during a committee proceeding. And this has happened, as Mr. Chambers has done for this motion, and it's also happened many times in the past and in other committees as well. And as soon as this motion is read into testimony, it becomes public, and I am then free to send it out to the media and other public people, whoever wants to have it. It's also in the minutes of proceedings at that time.
Thank you for reiterating that, clerk, and for all the hard work. Mr. Morantz, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Okay, I'll continue from where it says, the Minister of Public Safety, no fewer than 2 hours, the Minister of National Revenue, no fewer than 2 hours, department officials for the Departments of Justice and Public Safety, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the Canadian Border Security Agency, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, the Ombudsman for Banking Services and Investments, the Cullen Commission Lead Counsel, Royal Bank of Canada, TD Bank, Bank of Montreal, Scotiabank, CIBC, National Bank, the Ontario Securities Commission, and other witnesses as submitted by the members of the committee, that the committee take no fewer than 10 meetings for the study and report its findings to the House. So I'm just reading this into the record. I'm not moving it. I'm not, it's already on notice. It's been read into the record before, but it is relevant to the fact that the sub-amendment calls for the Minister of Finance to appear, and she has specifically made a request of this committee that the committee has ignored. And that motion, if it were moved and passed, would address. Having said all that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that this committee consider the 106.4 at this point in time.
Mr. Brandt, are you asking to adjourn the current debate and move on to the 106.4? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'd like to move on to the 106.4 and adjourn the current debate.
Okay, well, it's dilatory, so.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Maybe there's a little grass growing right along here. Some happy little things.
I love you, you love me. We all own our own bodies, so marry who you want and do whatever drugs you choose. And when it's time, you can die with dignity by determining your own end-of-life plan.
Hi, Maria!
Hi, Officer Winkles!
How you doing today?
I don't have to answer that question.
That is correct!
I'm recording you!
Am I being detained?
Nope!
Which I can legally do because I'm in a public place!
Come back if you have a warrant!
Alrighty!
Know your rights!
Yay!
Okay, Gumshoes, Carmen Sandiego is in a country where socialism failed. That narrows it down to Venezuela, Cuba, the former Soviet Union, Moldova, Laos, Vietnam, Albania, Angola.
So we did some digging into your past.
Oh, the suspense is killing me!
But we still haven't solved the case, Holmes. Why is marijuana a Schedule I drug?
Elementary, my dear Watson. Nixon and racism.
What?
You okay? I don't know. Hey man, it's alright. It's alright. We've got qualified immunity. Qualified immunity, it's not for you, it's just for me. I shot your dog.
I shot your wife.
I get to go on with my life.
My favorite part is where the character says, I do not want green eggs and ham. And then Sam I Am says, that's fine, you don't have to eat them. That's your right. The end. It's a short book.
Here we see one of the last taxicab monopolies struggling for life. Competitors have entered their ecosystem.
Do you know what eminent domain abuse is? It's when the government decides the neighborhood of make-believe is better used by a Taiwanese LCD manufacturer.
Today we have a real senator. Hello, Senator.
How are you doing?
What is your favorite color?
I would have to say blue.
Me too. Tell me, why did you sell all your stock right before the crash?
I mean, it's literally just the tragedy of the commons, but they made it cute.
And that sound means we're in international waters. I'm gonna marry a robot and sell my kidney on eBay.
My dearest Rowena, today the district attorney filed criminal charges against a two-door sedan.
Carmen Sandiego is hiding in a country that contains an American military base. Is she in Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, the British Indian Ocean Territory, Cuba, Germany, Djibouti?
Menace.
Circle, square, rectangle, war factory.
All right, Jack, where is your gay wedding cake?
I refuse to bake a gay wedding cake, and you can't force me to. It's my right.
That is your right, but it is my right to kick you off of this show. Please leave.
Yep.
You homophobic bearded meat goblin.
I just want enough to warm it up some. I don't want to set it on fire. It's very easy to set it on fire.
Well, today on This Old House, we're at the city zoning office because they think our new porch is 2 inches too close to the sidewalk, which is f***ing bullshit because their sidewalk is too far away from the street, which they'd know about if they'd read any of the emails I'd sent them over the past 18 months. So join us as we waste our whole f***ing day on this shit.
The premiere of Thomas the High-Speed Rail has been delayed again. And at the 10 Bitcoin level, you receive a handsome tote bag.
Quack! Good one! Quiet! Very good! Queen! What else starts with the letter Q?
Space lasers.
Oh!
John Podesta and Hillary Clinton had an email exchange about hot dogs.
Where do we get these puppets?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and you have a right to defend your house with firearms. With firearms.
In consultation with the clerk just now,